Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our webinar number 7, From Lions into Lambs, where we're talking about passive, aggressive, and our favorite style of communication, assertive, when you love an addict. My name is Xander Townend. I'm acting as your technical host this evening, and I will be helping to facilitate any questions that you may have that you would like to write into the chat. I'll be talking about that in a few moments. So many of you are already familiar with how to work in Zoom. For those of you who may be new to Zoom, if you go down, usually in the bottom center of your screen, there's a little thought bubble, like a cartoon thought bubble with the word chat underneath that. At any point, you can send a message to everyone, or you could choose to send a message to me by picking out my name, Xander Townend, LoveWithBoundaries. And if you would like to ask a question of Candace at a certain point, and you want me to ask it for you so that you remain anonymous, then please put it in the chat. And I'll be happy to do that when we get to the question and answer portion of our meeting tonight. It's my pleasure at this point to introduce Candace Plattor. And I'll start by saying, in this time of COVID, the spike in addiction and related overdoses has absolutely skyrocketed. What we now know to be true is that an enabled addict does not recover. Families and other loved ones of people struggling with addiction need to learn how to do what is right for the addicts they love, even if that means coming out of their own comfort zone of enabling. As therapists, we can help families of addicts stop this devastating situation in its tracks. So Candace Plattor is an addictions therapist in private practice where she specializes in working with the family and other loved ones of people who are struggling with addiction. In her unique and signature LoveWithBoundaries family addiction counseling and therapy system, also known as LoveWithBoundaries FACTS, F-A-C-T-S. As a former addict with over 30 years clean and sober, Candace learned that overcoming addiction is a family condition. Everyone in the family is affected by addiction, and everyone needs to heal. For over 3 decades, she's been helping both addicts and their loved ones understand their dysfunctional behaviors and make healthier life choices. So at this point, I'd like you to welcome Candace Plattor, who's going to be doing about 35 to 40 minutes of a presentation, and which will be followed by a question and answer period. We'll go as late as 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. So we'll end by then, and maybe sooner if we don't have as many questions. But we hope that you're feeling free to ask as many questions as possible. So Candace, over to you.
Sorry, I had to mute myself. Hi, everyone. Really glad to see all of you here today. So yeah, because it's nice out here. I don't know what it's like in your neck of the woods, but it's really sunny and warm out in Vancouver. So I think some people have decided to go for a walk or things like that during this time. But really glad to have all of you here. So we're calling this webinar In Like a Lion, Out Like a Lamb. And it's come to my attention that not everybody knows what that means. And it's kind of a shout out to weather in North America, in many places in North America, where at the beginning of March, the weather is often, it isn't like that right now, but it's often blustery and big and windy and rainy and kind of like that. And then at the end of March, beginning of April, it's nicer, it's warmer, there isn't so much wind, you know, so it's kind of in like a lion, out like a lamb. That's what people say about March. And so when we were thinking about aggressive and passive and assertive, and it's March, we just thought that it would be a good title. So that's what we called it today. But it's and for those of you who have been on my webinars before, you know that I use notes, and I'm so glad with Zoom that I can have my notes here. So you'll see me looking down at my notes and back up at you, and just bear with me. It's really important to know the different forms of communication, especially when you're dealing with the addict that you love. It's really important to understand the differences between aggressive and passive and assertive. So aggressive is like roaring like a big lion, and I might kind of exaggerate a little bit sometimes during this webinar. And passive is kind of following along like a meek little lamb. And assertive is about being able to stand up for yourself in healthy ways. And why is that understanding so important? What all of us ultimately want is for the person who's hearing us to be able to really be present with us, to want to hear what we're saying. And it's especially important when it's with the addict that you love, because addicts basically want what they want when they want it. So especially when there are disagreements with them, or you're trying to set boundaries and tell them what the consequences are, if you're aggressive, if you're passive, or if you're assertive, it's going to make a difference. So this is a really important thing to talk about today. So when we speak aggressively, it's like the other person is most likely either going to shut down or come back at you aggressively and not listen, to become defensive and angry. And in a frustrated shouting match, loudness does not usually equal healing or hearing. When we speak passively, we won't be taken very seriously most of the time. And especially by an addict who wants what they want when they want it. They don't care what you feel. They don't care what you think. They want what they want. And one of the reasons that people who are passive don't get taken seriously, you know, one of the things we call passive people is people pleasers. You've probably heard that term before. So many loved ones of people with addiction are people pleasers, and they're trying to not have conflict. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But what passive people often do when they're talking is at the end of the sentence, they'll raise the inflection. So they're talking like this at the end of a statement that isn't really a question, but it sounds like a question. Do you know people who do that? They do it over and over consistently. And when people are doing this all the time, the other person that they're talking to turns off, doesn't even want to listen to it. So if you have a tendency to do that, you might want to really pay attention to how to speak assertively, so that you are being taken seriously, so that you're not being shut out, you know. When we speak assertively, we're owning our own thoughts, our own feelings. We're listening openly to the other person's point of view, because we're looking for solutions that are going to work for everyone, especially if the other person is also speaking assertively to you. So we can role model that to people who aren't usually assertive. like addicts often are aggressive, sometimes passive, but we can be a role model for being assertive. So when you learn how to communicate assertively, we learn how to, as the saying goes, we learn how to disagree without being disagreeable. And doesn't that sound better than what you're probably doing now? So one of the things I forgot to tell you at the beginning is that this is going to be a more interactive um, webinar than you've had before. So what I'd like you to do is open your chat box. Just have it open. It'll be either at the side of the page or at the bottom of your page, depending on what version you have of Zoom. And if it feels better to you to learn how to speak assertively, how to communicate assertively, what I want you to do is write yes in the chat box. And I want you to do it right now. Let's see how many of you think that it's better that way. Okay, we've got 2. Oh, we got a whole bunch. Good. All right. Wonderful. Okay, and I'm going to ask you to do a few more of these as we go along. So let's take a closer look at each of these. We'll start with passive. When we're passive, we're generally trying to avoid conflict, as I was saying before, at all costs. It's like, I don't want conflict. I don't know how to deal with conflict, so I'm going to go along. I'm going to go along to get along. That's kind of the credo of somebody who's passive. Many loved ones will go out of their way to avoid conflict as people pleasers. And so as a result of that, they're often going to say yes when what they really want to say is no. What they wish they could say is no, because they know why they should be saying no, but they end up saying yes. And when we say yes, when we really mean no, a number of things happen. One is that we put our own needs on the back burner, or maybe just out of the situation entirely, maybe never to come back. Maybe your needs will never get met in that relationship. And that's not okay. Another thing we do is we swallow our feelings when we're passive. We don't express how we feel. And when we swallow our feelings, they're not digested very well, you know? So we find ourselves feeling things like angry and resentful. But if we're passive, we don't tell anybody that we're feeling angry and resentful. We just feel it inside and kind of seethe with it inside, but we don't tell anybody, because if we tell somebody that we're angry, they might get angry with us for telling them that we're angry. And oh my God, we can't have that. So we don't tell anybody that we feel that way. We feel isolated and lonely because there's really not a real connection with others, not a true, real connection. We become secretive. And this is what we talked about in the last webinar in February, where we talked about our secrets, Fess Up February. So if you weren't on that call, you're going to be getting the link to that and all of our other webinars when you get the link to this one. So you might want to listen to the February webinar about secrets. We become sick and accident prone. And I'll share with you a little bit of my story. I was a passive people pleaser for a very long time. It's only been in the last 10, 15 years or so that I've really started to learn how to be assertive, and I just love it, and I'm not going to do it any differently. But when I was passive, I didn't tell anybody how I was feeling, talking about all the things that I was just talking about now, kept secrets. just felt horrible inside all the time. And what finally happened is that my body imploded onto itself, into itself, and I developed Crohn's disease as a result of that. And Crohn's disease is not a fun disease to have. I don't think any disease is. Crohn's definitely isn't. And what I know today about being assertive, it's changed my life, but I still have Crohn's because Crohn's doesn't have a cure. So even though it's better, I still have it. I still deal with it every day because I allowed myself, basically, without realizing it, I allowed myself to get sick by being passive. And I don't wish that on any of you. So my hope for you is that you'll be careful about that. I think there are other illnesses as well that come up when people are passive or aggressive, and we'll talk about that. Things like cancer or strokes or heart disease. You don't want to do that to yourself if you can avoid it. And you actually can avoid it if it hasn't already happened to you. And if it has already happened to you, you can start to feel better. You can feel better and start to recover. One of the reasons that we become accident prone is that we're really not looking where we're going, and we kind of trip over ourselves. We're basically protecting ourselves against other people's anger all the time. We're protecting ourselves against conflict, and we're just not really aware of what's going on. So we make mistakes and we have accidents. So again, I don't want to wish that on anybody. We feel victimized when we're passive. We feel like everybody's just steamrolling all over us, and usually they are, because we're letting them. So 2 questions that you need to ask yourself are, 1, is getting that need met, the need to avoid conflict at all costs, is getting that need met actually giving you the desired result that you want with your relationships? And 2, if not, the question to ask is, am I willing to try something different? So here's your second interactive piece in the chat room. If you're willing to try something different, then I'd like you to type Dr. Phil into the chat box, and you'll see why later. But type Dr. Phil in the chat box if you're willing to try something different than what you've been doing. Let's see. I'm going to go to the chat room and see. Dr. Phil, Dr. Phil. Yes, but sometimes no. Yeah, I got that. Oh, I love all these Dr. Phils. That's fantastic. Thanks for playing with me today. This is fun. Okay, let's move into aggressive. When we're aggressive, it's actually because we feel many of the same things we feel when we're passive. Believe it or not, it's very similar, but we choose to handle this in a different way. When we're aggressive, we kind of belong to the bring it on, yeah, come and get me kind of club. Than the hopeless victim, I'm such a victim club. That's the passive one. They bring it on, how I dare you to, that's aggressive. Either way, there's a lack of true intimacy, connection, healthy communication. When we're aggressive, we want to be heard, and that becomes more important than hearing the other person or caring what the other person thinks. Aggressive communication is about my way or the highway. If you don't do it the way I want you to do it, you're gonna hear about it. And it's also an addictive way of being in the world. And what I mean by that is that even if you're not the one that's using drugs or drinking alcohol or playing the video games or spending all the money or looking at the porn, even if you're not the addict, If you want what you want when you want it, and you want it right now, that's an addict stance. And for aggressive people, it doesn't even matter if the other person hears your thoughts or feelings. You don't really care. You just want things to be the way you want them to be, and you'll try to squash anybody into submission to have that happen. So here's the clue I mentioned before about good old Dr. Phil. You know, when most of you have seen his show, you know who he is. I'm not the biggest Dr. Phil fan, but I like some of the things that he does. And when he's got his guests on the stage and they're telling him all about how awful life is, and this is happening and then this is happening, and he says to them, how's that been working for you? And most of them say, not very well. So I want you to get into that chat room again. If what you've been doing hasn't been working that well for you, I want you to type not so well in the chat room. Not so well. I'm going to go there right now and see. Not so well. I think there's probably a bunch of you, and you can check this out too. You're not the only one. And the thing about loved ones, sometimes you feel like you're the only one going through what you're going through, and you can see in the chat room, you are not. So yeah, we're still getting some not so wells in there. When we need to have others bow to our commands, we find ourselves feeling several things. I'll see if this sounds familiar to you. We feel angry and resentful. Remember I talked about that with the passive people too? But with aggressive people, they do tell others that they feel angry and resentful. They tell them all the time. And in fact, they tell them the stories that I call, can you believe this stories? And I have a client who knows that I'm thinking about him at this very moment, because I told him I was going to think about him when I talked about this. Can you believe it? He did this, and then she said that, and then that happened, and then that and they said this, and they did that. Can you believe it? Those are the can you believe it stories. A lot of aggressive people tell them. Passive people will tell some of those can you believe it stories from a much more victimized place to people who listen to them, and they'll usually tell it like this, and he said this. So I'm kind of exaggerating, but that's how it happens. But it's the same dynamic for both groups of people. So aggressive people also feel isolated and lonely, because again, there's a real lack of connection, real good, true, healthy connection. Sick and accident prone. You know, when you're aggressive and you've kind of always got yourself like this, and all this cortisol is going through your body and all kinds of chemicals are, you know, and you have a heart attack or you have a stroke or something happens to you that way. And you probably have some road rage and you have a car accident. Things like that happen a lot with aggressive people, people who tend to see the world that way. Aggressive people are unhappy and fearful much of the time. You'd not know it because they cover it up really well with that bluster, but they feel really unhappy, they feel fearful. Here's the thing, it's only when we feel fear about something that we become aggressive, because what we're trying to do is hide the fear. We're trying to control what we fear. That's the dynamic of control, is we try to control what we fear. If we don't fear it, we don't have a need to control it. So aggressive people control with like this, because they feel so scared inside. And they also feel victimized. They feel like people are steamrolling all over them. Does it sound familiar? It's passive and aggressive. So when you have a passive person and an aggressive person in a relationship together, they often feel the same things. It's just that one person is louder and more competitive than the other. That's really the only difference. It's interesting, isn't it? And so again, the two questions that you need to ask yourself is getting that need met to have your own way, or else is that actually giving you the desired result that you want? And if not, are you willing, excuse me, to try something different? So it's exactly the same two questions. So I'm just going to get a drink of water here. It's the same two questions we asked when we were talking about passive people. And now for something completely different, for all you Monty Python fans out there, it's one of my favorite movies, assertive. This is the third type of communication. So when we're assertive, we communicate with others in healthier ways. Being assertive means that we can stand up for our own needs, maybe for others' needs, for your own rights, to set appropriate boundaries without being either passive or aggressive. It's the ability to speak up for ourselves and express our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our opinions in ways that are honest and respectful and appropriate. Assertive people, I believe, are emotionally intelligent. They have self-control, they have emotional stability, they know what it means to behave respectfully, and they develop the ability to communicate like this because they know it's important. They relate sincerely with other people because they have an authentic desire to understand the other person that they're in relationship with, at the same time that they want to understand and validate themselves. So it's kind of a win-win. How does that sound to you? Would you like to know more about assertive? So if you want to know more about assertive, just type the word assertive into the chat box to let us know. If you don't know how to spell assertive, just type A. Assertive, ASS, starts with ass, assertive, ASSERTIVE, or just A, and let us know. Let's see how many people are doing that. Yeah, we got a whole bunch of assertives. Yay! Yay! Okay. And think about whether you're willing to do the inner work within yourself that it takes so that you can make a change into a healthier way of communicating and relating, especially with the addict you love, with everybody in your life, and especially role modeling this for the addict. So if you're willing to make this change, to do the inner work, some of you will be, some of you are already doing it. You're working with us at LoveWithBoundaries.com. Some of you may not quite be ready, or maybe you are. But if you're ready to do this work, to give yourself a better life, a better way of communicating with people, then I want you to put in the chat room, I'm willing, with an exclamation point. So really solidify it for yourself. I'm willing. Let's see if there are courageous I'm willing people. Yeah, we got a few and they're coming in. Yay. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Okay. So now I'm going to give you 3 brief examples of ways to communicate more assertively. And in the email we sent you, we did suggest that you have paper and pencil. If you don't have that, it's okay because you're going to get the recording. But if you do have it, you might want to write a little of this down. So the first thing I'm going to tell you about is I statements. And I will also say that the people who've been working with us already know these examples of assertive communication, but it never hurts to hear them again. So I statements are things like, I feel, write these down. I feel, I believe, I know, I understand, I think, I need, I want. These are all examples of I statements. So as I was saying before, that assertive people own their own feelings and thoughts and opinions, and this is how you express them with these kinds of statements. Now, there's a caveat to that. It's really important for you not to say, I feel that I feel that you're really awful. You don't want to do that. There's an old saying, kind of a cliche. I'm just gonna go back here, that if you've got your finger pointing at somebody else, I'll do it this way. You've got three fingers pointing back at yourself. Pointing at somebody else, 3 fingers pointing back at yourself. I don't want 3 fingers pointing back at me. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be communicating that way. So it's not I feel that it's I feel, and then some kind of emotion. I feel upset. I feel scared. I feel sad. I feel happy. I feel relieved. Not I feel that you. Okay, so be careful with that one. And go on back to your chat box and let us know if you wrote them down. If you did, just type in, I wrote them down. Let's see who wrote them down. Oh, we're not getting any who say they wrote it down. Oh, there's one. Yep, there we go. Good. Okay. I know that some of you might not have paper and pencil, but there's a number of you saying I wrote them down. Good. Okay. So here's the second, briefly, the second tool for assertiveness. It's called the Assertiveness Formula, or the AF, the Assertiveness Formula. So you might want to write this down too. The way you would write it is, I feel, and then a blank, a line that you leave blank. I feel blank when you blank, because blank, and maybe put a comma there. And what I need to see is, or what I want is blank, and a period. That's the assertiveness formula. So I'm going to explain that to you really quickly. I feel, as I was saying before, it needs to be a feeling word, not I feel that you, but I feel, I'll see if I can find an example. I feel worried. I feel really concerned when you, okay, I'm going to back up. Under the blank for I feel, write in brackets and in parentheses, emotion. Write that word, emotion. So you remember that you want to have a feeling word in there. When you put under that blank the behavior. For because, put under that blank the reason. And what I need to see is, or what I want is, put under that blank the best possible outcome. So we'll go back. I feel worried and concerned when you use drugs. That's the behavior. I feel the emotion when you do the behavior, when you use drugs, because I never know whether you're going to still be alive. I don't know if you're going to overdose. It's really scary for me. So the reason, and I'm going to tell you the reason why I want you to say the reason, because people who don't want to hear what we're thinking are going to say to us, Don't feel that way. You don't have to feel that way. Why do you feel that way? Well, you're going to tell them why you feel that way. So that's the reason. And what I need to see is best possible outcome would be what I need to see is for you to, maybe become serious about recovery and let me help you find somebody to work with. Let me help you find a counselor to work with because I love you so much and I really want to help you. So I feel worried and concerned when you use drugs because I never know what's going to happen to you and what I really want to see is for you to get some help, for me to be able to help you find somebody that's really good to work with you, that you'll like and you'll feel good with, because I love you so much and I don't want to lose you. So how does that feel as a way to be able to say something to somebody assertively? If you understand this, then I want you to write in the chat, yes, I understand the assertiveness formula, or the AF. I understand the assertiveness formula. If you don't understand it, if you have a question about it, if this is the first time you've ever heard it and you have a question, then write in the chat, I have a question about the AF, because we're going to be going into a Q&A really soon and you can ask your question there. So I'm just going to take a look in the chat right now. Understand it. People are understanding it. Great. Okay. So either you've heard it before or I did a wonderful job in explaining it. Maybe I'll go with that one. And so the third technique is called the sandwich technique. And I like to think about the sandwich technique like an Oreo cookie, because I love Oreo cookies. It's my second favorite cookie after chocolate chip. There is a pattern here of chocolate, but I just love cookies in general. So I like to think of the sandwich technique as like an Oreo cookie. So it's positive, negative, positive. When you use the sandwich technique, you start with positive, you give the critical feedback or the constructive feedback, and then you end with something positive, ideally. Of course, with an Oreo cookie, we all know that the inside is the best part. So it's not really the negative part, but oh well, we'll go with that anyway. So if we were going to use an example for the sandwich technique, could be something like, you maybe are spending a little time with the addict in your life and you might say, I'm so glad that we could have some time together. I've missed seeing you, if you don't see them very often. I've missed seeing you, something positive. I need to let you know that I don't want you to bring drugs into my house anymore. I feel very, very clear about this within myself, and I am not going to put up with it. So I just needed to let you know, no more for you bringing drugs into my house or coming here if you're high, right? But I'm so glad to have this time together with you, and I'm glad we can do some fun things and, and just hang out together. So that might not be the best example, but it gives you a feeling, it gives you the sense of positive, I'm glad we're together, negative, I don't want drugs in my house, positive, I'm so glad we're here together. And so sometimes you can just repeat the first one that you said, that's fine. So what you want to do is start with something positive so that they want to hear you. They want to hear you, kind of hook them in, and then you give them the constructive feedback as assertively as you can with I statements. I don't want you to bring drugs into my house. And then you end with something positive so that you kind of leave them wanting more, right? It ends on a nice note. So if you like the sandwich technique, if you understand it and you like it, what I want you to put in the chat is, I love Oreo cookies. See how many people love Oreo cookies. How can you not love an Oreo cookie? Like, that's just not even possible. Yep, there's one. And there's another. And I'm going to take you at your word that you love Oreo cookies. So if you don't have any in the house and you can have sugar in your house, you might want to get yourself some Oreo cookies just to remind you, you know. What's the time like? So I'm gonna throw in one more way to be assertive. And I'm just going to give this to you for free. Well, the whole webinar is for free, but I'm going to give you this as a bonus. Okay. So this one is called training a puppy. I know some of you have heard me talk about training a puppy before, and some of you have had puppies, and you know what it's like to have to train a puppy. If you don't train a puppy, or if you don't bring it to a professional trainer, if you don't get the puppy trained, it's going to run ramshackle all over your house. I think I used the wrong word, but you know, it's gonna make havoc all over your house. It's gonna pee on your floor. It's gonna, you know, tear your slippers up if you don't train your puppy. So I know that some people, when I was growing up, I don't know if people still do this, but you know, when the puppy peed on the floor, because that's what puppies do until they know that they shouldn't do it. People would take their puppy and put their nose in it and hit them with a newspaper. That's like horrible. And there must be a better way to do it. But you do need to consequence your puppy. You do need to let them know that that's not okay. And then you put them outside, or you put the leash on them and you take them outside. And you start to train them that if they have to go, let me know, go to the door, let me know you need to go out. Once a dog knows that, and once the dog is going to the door and scratching on the door and letting you know that it needs to go out, that's when you validate the puppy. And you say, good boy, good girl, oh, you're such a good puppy, good dog. And because they love that. They want that. And they're going to try to do everything they can to get that from you. So when you're setting boundaries, when you're dealing with addicts, you need to let them know what isn't okay and what the consequence is going to be. And when they do something that you really appreciate and you really like, you must validate that. You must train your addict as if you're training a puppy. Right? That's how it works with training a puppy. So if you like the training the puppy, if you get that, just write bow wow in the chat room. And let's see how many people do that. That's kind of silly, but oh, we're still at Oreo cookies. Oh, bow wow. I love it. Thanks for playing. I really appreciate that. Okay. So that is the end of the presentation. And now we're going to go into the Q&A. So if you have questions, I'm really happy to answer them to the best of my ability. Now, you've got two ways to do that. You can either, and Xander's going to tell you in a minute how to raise your hand so that we know that you have a question. So you can either raise your hand and ask your question of me yourself, or if you don't really want to do that, if you're a little shy and you don't want to do that, then you can write the question in the chat room. You can write it to everybody, or you can write it to Xander, and he will read your question to me and I will answer it, again, to the best of my ability. So Xander, do you want to maybe tell them how to raise their hands and we'll get started with that?
Absolutely. So depending on what device you're using, some people are on cell phones, some on iPads, some on tablets, some on MacBooks, or some on, you will see that the chat and various other options are either at the bottom of the screen, they may be at the top of the screen. It's very dependent upon how Zoom is working on your device. You will see a little smiley face icon with a little plus sign at the top. Underneath it, it says reactions.
Where is that? Oh, I see. Okay,
And,
mine's at the bottom. Mine's at the bottom. Some people will have it at the top. Okay.
and so when you click on reactions, you'll see a bunch. There's clapping hands and a thumbs up and a heart and a laughing and a shocked face and a party hat and raise hand. So if you click on the raise hand, then I'll know that you want to be able to ask Candace a question. And
okay, I'm going to try that right now. Yeah. So it's a little hard for me to see that because my wall is almost the same color as the hand. But Xander, you'll look carefully and make sure. Okay.
Very much.
And then to put your hand down, you go back to the reactions. It says lower hand, and yeah, so easy.
There you go.
Good.
Okay, so anybody who would like to put a question into the chat or raise their hand at this point, maybe a specific situation that you would like Candace to address. We've had many questions like that in the past of, I have this relationship with this person and it typically goes this way. What might you suggest?
We've got one in the chat right now. So it says, can you give a puppy training example with an addicted loved one?
Yep.
Whew, I will try. So the addict comes home, and if he's living with you, many addicts are living with the families, and they are high. He or she is high. And you know that because you know when they're high and when they're not. And that's when you go and you say to them, I don't want you here when you're high. You need to leave. You need to leave. And if they say, I'm not leaving, then you let them know that you're going to get them out of there. They can either leave pleasantly or you're going to call the police, but you don't want them there when they're high. And so that's going to be, you know, the peeing on the floor kind of example of, you need to do what you need to do there, get them out. But then there may be another time when they tell you that they're going to call you at 6 and they call you at 6 or maybe 5 after 6. And you say to them, thank you so much for being so punctual. I really appreciate that you called me when you said you would. That is so cool. Thank you. That's the training the puppy. They might not come together the way the sandwich technique does. Positive, negative, positive can happen in the same conversation. The training the puppy may not happen at the same time. You have to set a boundary and a consequence for bad behavior. If you validate bad behavior, they're going to keep doing bad behavior. But then after you do the boundary and the consequence and you maintain that, because that's really important, then the next time they do something nice, you tell nice or, you know, whatever, you tell them how much you appreciate that. Does that help? Okay. So I don't have my glasses here, and this is very Xander, can you read the questions?
I will. So I have another question that kind of comes on the heels of that question.
Okay.
It is, what if I have an addicted loved one who is not using, but is still being an ass?
Okay. So let me ask you, I don't know who's asking the question, and you don't have to tell me, but maybe you could write the answer to Xander so he can read it out. What do you think you might do in a situation like that? What could be a possible way to deal with that assertively? And maybe all of you can be thinking about this, because You may have loved ones in that same position.
Calling the police doesn't seem appropriate.
Okay, say it again. You kind of conked out there.
Calling the police does not seem appropriate.
Right? Okay. There are other ways. Yep. Is that all the person said?
So far,
Okay.
I've
Yeah, I
tried.
can take a minute to.
I've tried crying and yelling.
Passive aggressive, right? Tried crying, yelling.
And saying that I'm so sick of not getting along.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say that sounds like pleading. Maybe that's
Yep.
what the person means. Maybe it's not. That's
Okay.
not for
Okay.
someone
So
else entered in, go to support meetings for dry drunks.
okay. Yeah, dealing with people who are dry drunks, and what we mean by that is that they're not drinking or they're not using, but they're still acting as if they are, can be difficult people to deal with for sure. And it's disappointing because if they give up the substance and they don't change the behavior, it's like, I thought they were going to change, you know? And so the person that needs to change first is going to be you. So you're asking, what do I do in a situation like that? And what you do is you hold that person accountable assertively. And you say to them, you use one of the methods that I've told you, maybe the assertiveness formula. I feel really upset when you act like you should be in recovery, but you're not, and you're acting the same as when you were drinking. I feel really concerned about that, and I don't like it. And it's really hard because it's really hard to deal with that. And if you're going to live here, you need to be in recovery. You need to be going to meetings. You need to be having a sponsor, whatever. You need to be getting counseling. You need to be doing those things if you're going to live here. Because I want you to live here with us, but I don't want you to live here this way. This is not okay with me. I love you, and I love you enough to tell you the truth. It's not okay the way you've been behaving. And that's what you say.
And I got to thank you. So
Yeah.
thank you, Candace, for that. Then we have another question. I was raised by a passive aggressive mother. There was addiction in my family.
Yeah.
I have 2 passive aggressive and had an addict for a spouse. Now that I am somewhat woke to passive aggressive,
Yeah.
how do I best manage relationships with other family members who remain oblivious?
Well, the first thing I'm going to kind of refer you to is the Serenity Prayer. And I talked about the Serenity Prayer in a couple of other webinars, so you might want to listen to those if you haven't. So the Serenity Prayer basically tells us that all we can control is ourselves, that we don't have any control over anybody else. So you're not going to be able to stop other people from being passive aggressive. It's a horrible thing to deal with. Yeah, I had a very narcissistic mother who could be passive aggressive as well, so I get it. It's crazy making, right? But you can't change them. Only they can change themselves. So what you can do is you can say to them, you know, I'm not okay with you saying that kind of thing to me. Not okay with that. That doesn't feel good to me at all. And if that's the way you're going to communicate with me, then I'm not sure I'm going to want to be with you very often. Up to you. But, you know, it's just not very nice for me to be around. So if you want some help changing it, I'm really happy to to help you find somebody that will assist you with that, but I'm not interested in a relationship with people who talk to me that way. I'm developing my self-respect, and I don't want people who are disrespectful around me anymore. Period. Full stop. What do you think?
It says it is so crazy making, it could start you to drink or me.
It wouldn't start me to drink, I can tell you that. I've got 33 and a half years clean and sober, and I will not allow that kind of behavior in my life anymore. I will not have people in my life who act that way with me. There are probably lots of people who'd love to act that way with me, but I won't let that happen, because I can control what I can control the situations that I put myself into, and so can you. And yes, I know it's crazy making. And yes, you can use that as an excuse to drive you to drink or whatever bad behavior you want to do, whatever self-damage you want to do, or you can start to respect yourself, learn how to do that. We can help you with that. This is what we teach people to do. You can start to respect yourself and then be able to say to other people, I won't have this in my life. So it's your decision. You change what you're doing, especially when you're with me, or we don't see each other much.
Those are really strong boundary statements.
Really strong boundary statements. Because if we don't make strong boundaries, passive aggressive people are going to bulldoze all over us. That's what they do. We can't stop them, but we can take ourselves out of that situation. Or we can set boundaries with them, or both.
At the moment, Candace, those are all of the questions that I've had.
Did I scare people off? I set really strong boundaries today. I don't want a trauma-filled life anymore. I lived that way for a really long time. I don't want it anymore. So when that starts to creep into relationships, I put a stop to it right away. And if the other person is open to making changes and not doing that, that's fine. We can still be in relationship together. If they're not, well, okay, I'll keep you in my heart. I'll love you forever, but I'm not going to see you.
Comment that I got is loving the clarity.
Thank you.
And another one is,
this is
very helpful.
Good. Okay. Some of you may have read my book, and I have 3 books now, but my first book is called Loving an Addict. I do. Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. One more time. Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. And it's the top 10 survival tips for loving someone with an addiction. But it's about loving the addict and loving you at the same time. How can you do this? Well, you can. And this book will show you how. And if you work with us, we'll show you how. That's what we do.
First comment, love that book. Second comment, love that book too. Third comment, I recommend this book.
Aw, thank you guys. Thanks. Yeah.
I don't believe you've scared anybody off, Candace, if I can venture an opinion. I think that what you've done is you've held a really great example and been super clear. Other people are saying, great book, love all the books.
Oh, let me show you the other books, just so that you know what they are. So one of the other books, the second book, is a workbook that goes with Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. And it's called Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself, the workbook. But in the workbook, there are some questions for each of the tips that I have in the book. So you can work through this yourself if you want to. Or sometimes what happens when we're working with clients is that the client works through the workbook and then brings what they've written, and they bring that to sessions and we talk about that. So I work through the workbook with them, basically. But that's a really good way to start understanding yourself more deeply, and maybe looking at what's been stopping you, what's been getting in your way of being that clear, what's been scaring you about being assertive, what's kept you passive or what's kept you aggressive. And the workbook will, the book will show you a whole lot of things you can do, and the workbook will help you get more and more into yourself. And then the third book, which I'm really proud of too, it just came out recently, is called Self-Respect Sunday for Your Soul If You Love an Addict. And it's a weekly journal. So some of you are on my Self-Respect Sunday email list, so you're getting those. So they're the same kind of thing. They're different. None of them are the same, but there are images. Can you see them? There's images and then a quote from me on each page. And then there's lined paper for you to write. So it's a journal. So this one says, this is a picture, if you can see, there's two birds and one of them is going off on her own and the other one is following her. I love this. So the quote is, "The self-care creed. I have become a self-care queen in my later years. Although I care about other people's feelings, the way I feel about myself is most important to me. I care about other people's feelings, but the way I feel about myself is most important to me." So that's what you'll get here. You'll get all kinds of really beautiful images. Here's another one I really like. And my definition of codependency is a simple one. It says, codependency occurs when we put others' needs ahead of our own on a fairly consistent basis, going to any lengths to avoid unpleasant conflict with others. And we don't have to be that way anymore if we don't want to. We can learn. You see, here's the thing about dealing with conflict. When you learn how to deal with somebody else's disappointment in us, or frustration about us, or anger with us, when you learn how to deal with those things in a healthy, assertive way, then you can be yourself. You don't have to twist yourself around, and you don't have to protect yourself, because you know how to deal with it. It makes such a difference. So you don't have to be codependent for the rest of your life. I am living proof. I love it. So those are my 3 books. They're all available on Amazon and on the website too, I think. Yeah.
So we have a comment that I believe reflects what can be a common experience for people who are new to this. And that comment is, it is not so easy.
You're right. Boy, are you right. That's why I asked whether you were willing to do the inner work. And again, the Serenity Prayer talks about the courage to change the things we can. It talks about accepting the things we can't change, which is basically other people or the weather or, how old you get kind of thing. But the courage to change the things I can, which is going to be you. You can change you. That's about it. Your decisions, your reactions, your choices. This work is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart at all. But the way you're living now is probably not very easy either. And you can either live with the pain because I think there are two kinds of pain. So you can live with the pain that goes on and on and on and on and on and on. I could go on for a long time and on and on. Or you can live with the pain that has a solution. You can see a light at the end of the tunnel of that pain. And what I'm offering you is a light at the end of the tunnel. That's what we're doing here. So yes, you are absolutely right. It is not easy. It takes a lot of hard inner, you need to really be able to see yourself clearly, cry, grieve, get angry, get, all the things, and have somebody work with you who knows how to do that. That's really helpful. And lift yourself above that, so that this is my favorite mug, so that you live a life you love. Because all of you can. If I can, you can. I lived a really difficult life with narcissism and my family. You would never want to be born to them, and then Crohn's, and then addiction to the painkillers of Crohn's, being an opioid addict for years and years and years. Not easy. Hard life. And then I started working on myself, and that was hard too. Oh my God, that was hard. But even in the very beginning of doing that, I felt better about myself because I knew I was doing something to change it. And now I've lived without self-respect. I live with self-respect. It's not negotiable anymore. Never gonna not live with self-respect. What about you? So I ask you to join us, because we need so many more people, especially in our world today. We need people who respect themselves.
2 comments, Candace, that I think are important right now. The last one is, you and your journey are an inspiration.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say something to that. I never, ever, ever thought that anything I was going through could ever help anybody else. Never occurred to me I'd ever write a book or I'd ever become a counselor. I didn't know. I was just in misery. It's going to be the same for you. As soon as you start to, for the people who are already doing this work, you're an inspiration to other people, whether you know it or not. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
The other
What
thing,
was the other one?
yep. Somebody just said, just ordered your book. Thank you for all your help. And
oh, good. Hope you enjoy it. It's an easy read.
In the mail. And then the other thing that I think is really important to highlight is this comment. I could not do this alone.
No, none of us can really do it alone. And the good news is that nobody has to. Nobody has to. And at Love with Boundaries, we give a free 30-minute telephone consultation. It's absolutely free with absolutely no strings attached. And we tell you how we work, and we tell you what it costs, and we tell you how, you can have some of that too. And we tailor our programs to fit people's individual needs. We have a program, but it's not cookie cutter. So we look at whether we're a fit for you and whether you're a fit for us. And if you'd like to try that out, all you have to do is fill out a questionnaire. Xander, you'll be giving that link to people?
It goes in every email after a webinar. You will receive in the email that I'll be sending out tomorrow, within 24 hours of the end of this webinar today, you will receive a link that lets you listen to or download all of the other webinars we've done, as well as a link to each of the
questionnaire
books and the questionnaire.
Yeah. So when you get the link to the questionnaire, if you want to talk to us, and it's probably Xander that you'll be talking to, just fill out the questionnaire and submit that, and then we'll get in touch with you and we'll set up a time to talk for 30 minutes free of charge to see where you are in this journey and what kind of help you need. So we're available for that. And there are also, there's self-help groups, there's parenting groups, there's 12-step groups if you're liking that. There's a lot of self-help books out there. So, there's help for you. You don't have to be alone doing this. And I don't use the word should very often, but you shouldn't be alone doing this because it's complicated and we have our own baggage and triggers and trauma and stuff. And sometimes we can't see ourselves clearly. We need somebody else to help us do that.
The thing which I'm gonna risk this. I was at the meeting when Candace first came into the room, and I understand.
Crying. Oh, I was crying. And
yep.
Yeah.
She was about as much of a mess as anybody else as I've ever seen come into the room, including myself.
Well, and, thank you, Xander.
Well, I mentioned because
yeah.
We both know hundreds of people who have been victorious and have gone on to live better lives. And we want
from addiction, addiction, because we are both loved ones of addicts and we've been addicts ourselves.
Yes.
So we know the drill, and neither one of us was very healthy back then. So if we can do it, why can't you do it?
And we're here
that's my question.
We haven't talked, you haven't talked, Candace, about the other team members that we have on our team. The need for this work is so important that Candace has only so many families she can help in a given day, in a week. So she's been inundated with requests for help, and this has led to hiring, training in Candace's
supervising
system. What we've got 4 other therapists who are working with us, and they're different, and they are all highly trained in their own right. They either have their master's degree, or they're working on their master's degree, or they're certified as counselors. So we have a crew that is available to help you.
Yep. Because, families, there are families all over the world who have addicts in them, and it's a family condition. Everybody struggles, everybody suffers. It's not just the addict who's suffering, but there's not that much help out there for you, right? There's help for the addict. There's lots of rehabs and treatment centers and this and that, but there's not a lot of help for you guys. And so that was, when I saw that, I decided that that's what I was gonna put out there into the world, was let's help. And the way our program works actually helps people. It really does. So we've got a few people here today who've written testimonials for our website, and it works. So it's a good thing. But I'm not trying to sell you on it. If you want a 30-minute consultation and hear about it, then that's great. And if not, that's fine too.
And for those who wish, it's now possible for you to book the consultation to be either on the phone or on Zoom. And so that is sometimes a preferred way for people who are, say, in the UK or Australia.
We've got clients in other countries. Yeah.
So we serve people
sorry. Yeah, we serve people all over the world, was what you were going to say before I interrupted you. I just wanted to say to Maria, thank you. Appreciate that.
And the other comment is, your words give me hope. Thank you for providing these webinars.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. That's such a great thing to know. And someday your words are going to give somebody else hope. And that's how it works. That's the ripple effect of all of this. So we need you. We need you to be well. We need you to be healthy. We need you to be assertive and self-respecting. And we're happy to help you get there.
Not only do we need you to do that, but so do all the other people in your life.
Yeah.
So kind of a final note, or almost final note, is that we are looking to do one of these webinars around about the second Wednesday of almost every month this year. You will be receiving email notification. If you've been on our list at all, you will receive email notice when they are coming up. And it's possible that we will be publishing all the dates, or the intended dates, for all of the rest of the year, for the rest of the webinars. We won't have titles for them all yet, but you'll be at least able to, bookmark in your calendar that there's going to be another amazing webinar. And so,
and if you have a topic for a webinar and you'd like us to do a webinar on something, let us know. We'll look at it. We'll really consider it. So, yeah. And I really want to say one more thing, that those of you who are looking at me right now and thinking, wow, she's so amazing. I want you to know that I still have growth periods that make my hair stand on end. I mean, I'm not perfect, and life isn't always tickety-boo, and I got problems like anybody else, but I know how to deal with them better, and I know how to not beat myself up about them, to respect myself while I'm dealing with them. So that's the difference. But life is life, there's no guarantees that you're going to have a perfect, wonderful life, but you can have a life you love and feel really good about if you do the work on yourself. And that's really the only way, I think. I mean, I don't mean to proselytize, they are always the only way, but unless you're doing your own work first, the addict in your life is probably not going to recover. If you keep enabling your addict, if you keep doing things if you keep being passive with them or aggressive with them, I don't think that's going to work for you so well. So it's up to you to do your work. And as a response to that, they look at you doing that. They want what you've got. They want a piece of that. You can be a great role model. Zender, I can't hear you.
Thank you, Candace. Another comment is, Candace and team, you are amazing. My life is so much better because of you. And then thank
you, Susanna.
I
Thank you,
appreciate
Susanna.
guidance and support to make changes with my communication. Courage on my part will be necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
courage on your part will be necessary, but you've got it. You're here. You're saying it. You've got it. It's like, you've had it all along. Isn't that what Glinda the Good said in Wizard of Oz? It's been in you all along. Let's get it out. This has been really fun, everyone. And thank you for playing with me in the chat room. And I really enjoyed doing that. I might do some more of that in some of our webinars coming up.
And so then Pat says, thank you for believing in us.
Oh, for sure. Everybody has butterfly potential. I don't know. Should I tell people really briefly about butterflies? Okay. So I love butterflies. People always know what to give me because I love butterflies. You see that? Somebody made that for me. Because butterflies start out as caterpillars, and they crawl around on the ground, and little boys like to squish them, and little girls like to shriek, "Oh, a caterpillar!" And then you dissect them in biology class. I mean, a caterpillar gets no respect. But a caterpillar if it can live long enough, a caterpillar has an instinct, and it knows that if it doesn't change, it's going to die. So it shimmies itself up a tree, and it shimmies onto a limb, and it hangs upside down, and it creates this cocoon of what I call bug juice, because this is what we sit in when we do this inner work, as we're sitting in our own bug juice. And it sits in the bug juice, and as long as it takes to basically change almost its entire DNA. Can you imagine? It changes itself, it metamorphosizes itself, is that a word? Into, when it's ready, not a second before, not a second after, when it's ready, it comes out as this amazing creature. Nobody says, ew, a butterfly. Everybody says, wow, butterfly. And we can all do that. If I can do that, I am a butterfly. If I can do that, you can do that. I have not always been a butterfly. I started out as a caterpillar, and some days I still feel like one, but I'm not. I'm a butterfly. So I know you can do it. It's a question of whether you choose to. That's all it is. It's all it takes is that choice.
Right on. Thank you, Candace.
Okay, so I hope that you will all come back for the next webinar next month. I have no idea what we're doing it on. I don't know when it'll be, but it'll be sometime in April. And let us know if you've got some thoughts and ideas, and maybe it'll be your thought that we do a webinar on. But so thank you, everyone.
We did a little planning meeting earlier today, some of the other folks in the team, and because Easter is happening in April, we're thinking that the best date for the next webinar will probably be April the 14th.
Okay, so we'll let you know.
Yes.
That's fine. We'll let you know.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Candace?
Thank you. Thank you.
Keep an eye out for the email with the recording link, and we'll look forward to hearing from any of you. There will be a response email there. We love to hear from you, so please feel free to reach out to us. Thanks.
Yeah, write to us if you want. Yep. Okay. Bye, everyone. Have a great evening. Zender, can you keep the chat?